Is now reconvened in open session. So we'll first take action on our closed session items. Mr. Burdine.
Excuse me, Madam President, I need to get it out of the back room.
Okay, then hold that thought and we'll go on to Mr. George.
I move that the board appoint Christy Durham to the position of Director of Elementary Curriculum.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. George and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion? Please, hearing none, please vote. Motion passes. Mr. Burdine.
Yes, Madam President. I move to propose non-renewal of Patrick Schultz's term employment contract at the end of the contract year and to authorize the superintendent or his designee to notify Mr. Schultz in accordance with applicable law and policy and to specify that the hearing, if any, concerning the proposed non-renewal of Mr. Schultz's term employment contract be conducted by the Fort Bend ISD Board of Trustees.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Burdine and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Motion passes. Mr. Rosenthal.
Yes, ma'am. I move to renew and award the probationary employment contracts of specified certified employees for the 2016-17 contract year as provided under separate cover.
Second.
I move to renew and award.
Hold on just a second.
Oops.
We have to do
Oh, we
those
gotta do
separately, I
separately.
think. So
Sure.
we have a motion by Mr. Rosenthal and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Motion passes. Mr. Rosenthal.
Yes, ma'am. I move to renew and award the term employment contracts of specified certified employees for the 2016-2017 contract year as provided under separate cover.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Rosenthal and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Motion passes. Mr. Rosenthal.
I move to renew and award non-Chapter 21 contracts of specified employees for the 2016-2017 contract year as provided under separate cover.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Rosenthal and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Oh, that's me, sorry. Motion passes. Mrs. Towson.
Yes, ma'am. I move that the Board of Trustees accept the hearing officer's recommendation concerning the Level 3 employee grievance appeal of Dana Rowe.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Towson and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Motion passes. I believe that concludes our action on closed session items. We'll now go on to the board members' reports. Mrs. Towson, can you please share with us the activity report?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. The Board of Trustees have been very active in April. They've attended middle school tennis matches, Student Leadership 101 luncheon, the Ridgepoint High School swim banquet, Baines Middle School band concert, Missouri City State of the City hosted by the Fort Bend Chamber, Coffee with Congressman Pete Olson event, the Go Public Publicity Campaign meeting, the Gulf Coast Area Association of School Boards meeting, Investment in Youth luncheon, Staff Service Awards reception, 10-year and 5-year recipients, Fort Bend ISD School Board Candidate Forum. I'm sorry,
10-year and 15-year.
what did I say?
5. but
Sorry,
that's okay.
10 and 15, thank you. Greater Houston Partnership Education Subcommittee meeting, Teacher of the Year banquet, Oakland Elementary 10th Anniversary Celebration, Barrington Place Elementary 25th Anniversary Celebration, the Missouri City State of the City, the TASB Board Meeting, Leadership TASB Session 4, Crockett Middle School Fair, and the Highlands Elementary School 25th Annual Multicultural Fair.
Thank you, Mrs. Tossan. We also have some special reports tonight. Mr. Rice?
Thank you, Mrs. James. I attended a meeting of the TASB Board of Directors on April 1st and 2nd. And I'm reporting on three primary things. One is accountability, the second is school finance, and the third is the result of the recent grassroots meeting here, held in Region 4. Under accountability, the Commissioner of Education spent 2 hours with the TASB board discussing accountability, and it was probably the most informative discussion I've been involved with regarding that subject. The accountability House Bill 2804 has 5 domains, which I'm sure you're aware of. One is assessment results, which deals with the percentage of students performing satisfactorily on state-required assessments. The second is annual improvement, percentage of students meeting standards set by the commissioner, which are aggregated by subject and grade. The third is closing achievement gaps, academic differentials by race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status. 4 is school performance, which is equal to 35% of the overall rating. And the 5th is the community and student engagement, which will have 3 programs determined by us locally and equates to 10% of the overall grade. So some of the key dates coming up, January 1st of next year, the TEA will release a report indicating the rating the district and campuses would have received for the 15-16 school year if the A through F rating had been in place. And then next summer of 17, we've got to report to the TEA which 3 indicators will be used for Domain 5, which is the local community and student engagement. And in the spring of 2018, we'll be grading ourselves on Domain 5. And then August of 18, we'll get our letter grade from the TEA on how we're doing. So it's exciting. On school finance, we had a report from TASB, former TASB employee and now consultant Catherine Clark, been with TASB for many, many years, commented that the state Supreme Court is expected to issue a ruling on the school finance lawsuit any day. She's working with the TASB board to prepare our recommendation and plan regarding funding of public school funding, but obviously it cannot be completed until the Supreme Court has issued a ruling. But Grover Campbell, who is the Executive Director for Governmental Relations, reminded the TASB board there are several lawsuits against the state. 3 primary lawsuits that, if lost, will require the state of Texas to reimburse the litigants over $10 billion. And some of these include the state of Texas foster care system, it's a $100 million hit. Midland-based Southwest Royalties, which is a subsidiary of Clayton Williams Energy, a $4.4 billion refund for 2017 and $500 million a year thereafter. And then the big one, which is kind of surprising, is AMC movie theaters, which would get $6 billion in initial refunds and $1.5 billion a year after that in lost collections. So obviously the outcome of these lawsuits, combined with the current situation with tax revenues on oil and gas and the current political climate in Austin, will figure prominently in how this lawsuit ends up. And then lastly, on the grassroots, I'm pleased to announce that we had increased our participation at Region 4. School board members from all over Region 4 attended and collectively set their legislative priorities. And Mrs. Kristen Tasson will be a representative to the Legislative Advisory Committee. She'll be going there in June to help hammer out those things into a cohesive consent agenda at the TASB meeting. We appreciate your service. And one last thing, and that is this Wednesday at the Gulf Coast Area of School Boards, the State Board of Education Chair, Mrs. Donna Bahorich, will be there to visit with us. And she's also going to visit with the Chamber of Commerce here in June. So if you can't go on Wednesday, you can see her when she's here in June. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Mr. George, do you have a report?
Yes, Madam President, I very excited to report to the board that, as you all know, I am participating in Leadership TASB, which is almost coming to an end, and we had a wonderful session in Amarillo, Texas. Growing up in India and not going to school here in United States or in Texas, for me, it was an amazing experience. They have the outside the conference room learning, means visiting school districts, and I visited Hartford ISD right outside of Amarillo, which is an amazing school district with, I think they have one of the best vocational training program, which include automobile mechanic, CNA, which is certified nursing assistant, vet assistant, meat plant tester, etc., etc. I thought it was very interesting thing to watch. These kids are learning and experiencing and getting ready, and we met some students. They're going to college. They're going to be supporting themselves because of this program, and obviously the superintendent Kelly Moulton said she knows Charles Dupree, and the mission for that school district is preparing the students to face the world not only with confidence, with skill. And I thought it is very interesting. And then, of course, we visited Highland Park Independent School District, 102 years old. And of course, something very interesting I saw there is they take security very seriously. They arm their staff. They have a safe with a weapon, and some of the staff members have access to it. I thought it was very interesting. And of course, we have presentations include one of the renowned speaker, Derek Greenfield, presented about an evolving nation with student population coming from various aspects and, different culture, different community, and understanding them and incorporating their feelings and their, incorporating them into our system. And I thought ours is one of the most diverse district in state of Texas, maybe not just in state of Texas, in the United States. So for us, it was a learning experience. And of course, the session ended with a lot of different activities. And also, as a board member, I realized one of the board members, the past board members, presented Lamarck ISD. If you know the story of them, they lost their accreditation, and they are and she was presenting what happened when TEA closes your district. It was very eye-opening, and I realized as board members, we make decisions on a daily basis which can have a long-lasting impact and changing not only the children, the community you are part of. So I learned I have to be careful about whatever the decisions I'm making. Because of this program, I believe it's almost coming to an end. I am a better board member, and I'm a better person, because it was very interesting to learn, understanding others, and without any prejudgment, and understanding people's feelings, and incorporating people. And it was all across the board, all sessions. They had interesting sessions, breakout sessions, things of that nature, to make me and make the participants, 35 other board members, a better board member, and understanding our responsibilities and also the decisions we are making, I know I'm repeating, it can have a long-lasting impact. And I'm very thankful to be part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. George. Do we have anything else, Mr. Rosenthal?
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to announce that Second Baptist Church at Pearland undertook a project called Serve Willow Ridge. And one of my friends who's a board member down in Alvin shared this with me. So they had 359 volunteers show up at Willow Ridge with mulch and I think about 100 gallons of paint. And so they did a lot of mulching and landscaping and painting, you know, on the outside. And anyway, I think, you know, we owe some appreciation for that. And I'm glad they could do that.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that, Mr. Rosenthal. I didn't realize that happened. That's really generous of them. I believe that concludes our special reports. So now we'll go on to the consent agenda. Do we have any items we'd like to remove from the consent agenda tonight?
Yes.
Mrs. Tolsan?
Item 11C.
11C. Anything else? All right, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Madam President, I move to approve the consent agenda items 11A through I with the one exception of removing C as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Rice and a second by Mr. George. Do we have discussion? Any discussion? All right, hearing none, please vote. Motion passes. Next, item, 11C, which is a schematic design for Dulles Elementary School. Do we have a motion?
Madam President, I move to approve consent agenda item 11C as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Rice and a second by Mrs. Tolsan for the schematic design, for Dulles Elementary School. Do we have discussion?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Rosenthal?
So, can somebody tell us what the bond program this was originally in? Was it '07?
I can address that real quick, Oscar. So the aspect of the project we're doing now is not included in any bond program. There was, it's my understanding, in 2003, there was the walls as they are today, kind of the partial enclosures was completed. And that's all that was funded and done at that time. Since that time, the school has been operating with kind of the cabinetry and things like that to help a little bit. But so this project is coming more out of our reserve funds.
Contingencies.
Yes.
Okay.
But it was never a bond, it was never included in a bond program.
Okay, because I was under the impression from talking with folks, and when we've had folks come and talk about this, that it was an approved project in one of the bonds. So, regardless of that, you know, this is something that's been in the works for many years, and especially now that you're saying that they kind of started to realize that they wanted this thing closed in, but only did part of it back in 2003, so that's 13 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of disappointed that we're having to delay this for the following summer, and I don't think that's right. So I don't know what, you know, in the update you said, you know, cost effective, but what does that mean? Are we talking an extra 50,000, 100,000, $1 million? What are we talking? Because if that's the case, then you know what, I think we owe it to that school to just, you know, just do everything we have to get that done. Because I actually talked to 3 people, 3 parents from that school this past week, and they were really excited. They told me they saw the architects there, and they were really excited to finally get that thing done. And you know what? It's been 13 years. We got to just do it.
Oscar, what are you projecting if we try to expedite it to this summer? What do you think it's going to cost us to try to do that?
It's not necessarily just the cost, it's actually the time frame to be able to get it done, and it's actually the lead time for the mechanical equipment to get in. So the concern is that if we go in there and we start demolition, and we cannot get the mechanical in place, that we would not be able to open school. And that's the biggest concern that we have.
So, you know, usually these things are not engineering problems, they're money problems. So, I mean, what are the exact issues, you know, when you say it's a mechanical, kind of a mechanical issue? What are we really talking about? I mean, you know, just if you can just go into some more details on this.
In building the walls, if you just think of the school right now as basically a warehouse, a shell. We're going in there and we're cutting this up into cubes into each one of the classrooms. Right now, the building is designed to where it has just a plenum return. You know, the air just finds its way back. In this particular case, once we put walls in, we have to go in and put ductwork in. We have to, you know, duct all the return. We also have to bring it up to code, bring in some outside air units. And the concern is in coming back to y'all in May for approval and releasing an architect, the lead time for, I mean, not an architect, a contract, the lead time for them to be able to order the materials is what's the killer. And so what they were looking at already was looking at double shift and, you know, in order to try to get it done. But the more that we looked at it and visiting with the architect and the consultants, it really is just too tight of a time frame to be able to do it. If we delay it, bring it in the right time frame, you know, probably a March approval by the board, release a contractor that can order all the materials, then all of that will be in hand for them to be able to start, and then it's a doable project in 2 months.
Why didn't we know this before we brought it to the community 2 weeks ago?
Initially, we were looking at going with a JOC, and we were going to be approving it in this meeting as a JOC. Those pricing, when they came in from them, were just extremely high.
I don't think, that didn't answer the question. I mean, I don't think it answered the question I was asking. Why didn't we know 2 weeks ago that it was gonna take, that we didn't have enough lead time to get in there, that we weren't gonna have to do the duct work, that we weren't gonna have time to bring it up to code? Why didn't we know that 2 weeks ago?
Well, one of the things we had was a pre-bid to go for the CSP, and the feedback that we're getting from the contractors is just that they're very concerned because of the time. And that happened from the time we met 2 weeks ago to today.
So I'm disappointed because if it was gonna be brought to the board and put out to the community that this work was gonna be done this summer, I feel like it should have been vetted better than that. I feel like we should have known before it came to us what this lead time was, what it was gonna entail. We should have had, I feel like all our ducks weren't in a row for this. So I feel the same way Mr. Rosenthal feels, because now the community's been told, and we didn't really handle the process correctly. That's what I feel like. And so now we're having to backtrack and tell them they're gonna have to wait another year, 2 weeks later. So I have the same concern Mr. Rosenthal has, and I feel frustrated by it.
I wanted to add to your frustration, because same thing. I talked to some actually one of my wife's cousin teachers, his cousin teachers there, and 3 parents I talked to. We actually sent, if we couldn't do it this summer, we actually already sent a wrong message. You know, they all are expecting it to get done. They are excited. And this has been, you know that this is not something we are talking recently. It has been a outcry for years maybe. And I think it is totally unfair. We are delaying this one more year. I totally agree with both of my colleagues are saying.
Mr. Rice?
Well, Mr. Perez, I was just gonna ask, why can't we use the job order contract?
That's what I was gonna say too.
What's the premium?
The lowest pricing we'd had was about $2.7 million, I believe.
Okay. What do you think you're gonna get it at CSP?
Well, we were hoping, we were looking at about $2.2 million, but based on what, you know, we're seeing now, I don't know that we would get that based on what, you know, the potential bidders are thinking.
What do you think you will get then?
It's hard to say, sir.
2.2?
That's what.
I mean, that's what we're asking for the budget, but I
Okay.
mean,
So it's just a $500,000 delta?
yes, sir.
If we did go with the jock, couldn't they order the makeup air units and try to expedite them? And I mean, if we're just putting up walls, the ductwork, that's not a long lead item, is it?
No, sir, that's correct.
What if we just took a step back and rethought that, Dr. Dupree, and added, increase the budget? I mean, if CSP is only gonna save us $500,000 and we've gotta wait until next year to do it, maybe we should reconsider going with jock. And I know you were trying to be careful and frugal when you first decided to switch from jock, but now that you've had some preliminary conversations and you're concerned that, I mean, the lowest we can get is 2.2, maybe, what if we were to reconsider that, Dr. Dupree? And start, and even if they couldn't finish all of it, maybe they could get a significant amount done or do it in a way that it could be phased or something so that we could show progress. Is that a possibility?
It's definitely a possibility, yes, sir.
Could I ask Mr. Powell if your thoughts on that? Are you in favor of, would you be able to move forward if we
You
went?
could come to the microphone, please, Mr. Rice. I'd like to hear your thoughts on if that, either one.
Yes, Trustee Rice, that is possible. Phasing is possible, but it's still a situation of the makeup units being made and delivered within that time frame. So the phasing is an option, while we'd end up bringing maybe the second and third grade online, then working towards the fourth and fifth grade.
Mm-hmm. Well, is there an alternative that we could use while we're waiting for the makeup air units? Where are these makeup air units going anyway?
In the mezzanine area.
Are they, that school, is it single zone air handling units with VAV boxes, or what's the HVAC system there?
Right now, it's open plenum.
Okay, well, I understand the open plenum, but if we're gonna put walls up and then we're restricting the return airflow, we put a transfer duct
Yes.
with a sound attenuator on it. That's just sheet metal. We don't even order that. They make it in the field.
That is part of the scope right now.
So I guess I'm just, I know there's kind of a rhythm to every construction project. If you try to force it, you wind up with a mess. But that's why I'm asking if we approve the procurement method tonight and added funding to compensate for that, why, if we went forward, would we be doing something wrong, or are we just gonna have to wait until next summer?
If the possibility of pre-approval for the mechanical system, then it's feasible, Trustee.
But if they could order it well, if we approve it tonight to go jock, then the job order contractor, he can give you a couple of different procurement methods. He could order the equipment as soon as you approved his cost estimate for the equipment, and then he can give you another estimate for the balance of the stuff. Do we have a limit on, what's our limit for using jock contracts at Fort Bend ISD?
That method would go ahead, if we could get approval tonight for that and release, get a contract in place and release them, that gives us the lead time that I feel we need to get everything procured. And I feel that it is possible to get this done.
So can I make a suggestion? So we're approving the schematic design. We would need to change the procurement method from what is currently existing in the motion. So we would need an amendment. And then would we want to do the budget amendment tonight also, or would we want to bring that back at a different time? What would be the recommendation?
Well, I think we would have to approve the budget amendment tonight because they can't really move forward executing any contracts unless it's fully funded.
Right.
Okay.
And I would be happy to make that amendment to the motion unless Mrs. Tasson or Mr. Rosenthal would.
Well, let's see if we have any other questions, and then we
Okay,
can see.
thank you.
I have one more point of clarification, and then I'm happy to have you make the amendment, Mr. Rice. I just want to clarify, because I think I heard you say that we have listed here a $2.2 million budget under CSP currently. Is that correct? That's what you presented to us.
That is correct.
Okay, but you're saying that you're not even sure you can get the 2.2, meaning that you think it's probably going to be more. Is that correct?
The jock price was 2.7 in a little bit, but 2.7 would be.
I understand, but under CSP, I thought I heard you say that you weren't even sure you could get 2.2 under CSP. Did I misunderstand?
No, that is correct. I did say that.
Okay, meaning that it may be more under CSP as well.
Correct.
Okay, so it could be less than $500,000. I thought that's what I heard.
Right, I thought I heard that.
Yeah.
Delta different, less than $500,000 between the CSP
And the
final
job.
price and the job.
So
Maximum
especially,
of $500,000.
exactly, so especially given that, I would, I would want us to move forward. So, Mr. Rice, I would be happy to have you make the amendment.
Madam President, I would like to amend the current motion to allow the administration the ability to use the job order contract procurement method for this project and to increase the budget at this time by $600,000 to $2.8 million.
Second.
We have an amendment to the motion on the floor to change the procurement method to job order contracting and to increase the construction budget to $2.8 million. And we have a motion by Mr. Rice and a second by Mrs. Tossan. Do we have further discussion on this amendment? I'll ask Dr. Dupree or Mr. Perez, do we feel like this is going to make this a possible move ahead for this project? I think that's what the intention of the board is try to get this fixed for the school year.
Yes, it does.
All right, so do we have any other further discussion?
I think that's the right thing to do.
All right, anything else? All right, so let's vote on the amendment, please. Job order contracting and increase of the budget. So the amendment passes. Now we have a motion on the floor to approve the schematic design with the amended project budget and the amended procurement method. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Motion passes. Thank you very much. That concludes our consent agenda items. Now we're on to the action items. Action item 12A is the approval of the new special ed non-campus positions for the 2016-17 fiscal year. Do we have a motion, please?
Madam President, I move to approve action item 12A as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Rice and a second by Mrs. Tossan. Do we have some information, Dr. Dupree, on this
Yes,
from Dr.
Dr.
Hill?
Dina Hill is prepared to share a little bit of information with the board.
Good evening. I just had a couple of slides just to bring us back to, I know it's been a couple of weeks, so good evening. I wanted to talk about the special education reorganization and why we're recommending the positions tonight. And so, we talked about over the last months of in special education, we've talked about the report that was done and the information that we shared with the board. One of the visions of the special education department is to provide those quality instruction in the least restrictive environment. And we've talked about least restrictive environment a lot. But this is really directly related to our District Goal 1. So we want our students and students receiving special education services to receive that quality instruction in the least restrictive environment that will enable them to reach, to receive their special education services and to reach their full potential. So one of the things in the recommendation and what we spoke about a couple weeks ago at the board workshop was Goal 8 and the importance of effective and efficient use of personnel. So what is different about our new positions is that they're created with specific requirements to attract quality candidates. Expertise is a critical component in the job qualifications, and if you look at the postings. And experiences, on all of our job descriptions, we are looking for candidates with experiences with inclusive service delivery models and also a lot of knowledge with behavior supports. We know that students, there are going to be students who have to be pulled out of the general ed setting for some parts of the day, or some students for all of the day, just depending on their needs. But we're looking for quality candidates that can really get in there based on the students' needs, whether they have autism, whether they have a cognitive disability, whether they have some kind of communication issue, and really utilize our candidate strengths to get in there and help the students, provide staff development to the teachers with the goal of getting the students to a least restrictive environment as soon as possible. And so that's one of the big, I guess, focuses on the new positions. The organizational chart is designed to increase accountability of the special education department staff. So we've redesigned it to allow for that increased coaching and learning within our own department, but then at the same time really increasing expectations, holding them accountable so that we can see positive results. And then overall, really looking to build capacity and sustain change. We've worked a lot this year, I think, on understanding our issues, our data collection, but we need that systems level coordination. So we know what the data says, we know what we need to do, and now we're targeting those goals and implementing them. And with that effective collaboration and communication from the community, from our campuses, we believe we can get where we need to go for our students, and these additional positions will give us that opportunity. And it all ties back to that alignment and that access to the written, taught, and tested curriculum. Students with disabilities, they have that, we have that expectation for them, and they have that right, just like their non-disabled peers sitting next to them. So we believe that these positions will get us there. And that's really all. I just gave a little overview.
That was perfect. I think that's great. Let's see if anybody has any questions or comments, or anybody would like to say anything. Mr. Rosenthal?
Yeah, Dr. Hill, could you just explain how the org chart allows for more accountability?
Yes, so we really haven't had, we've taken our 2 assistant directors, and one is going to be specifically over elementary, one is going to be over secondary, and then the director is going to be over the 2 of them. In addition to evaluation and there's a position there to really work on initiatives and program improvement and keeping us going in the right direction. So that position is directly works with me, as well as the coordinator or program manager of evaluation, so that I can tie that back into the director and the elementary assistant director for elementary and the secondary assistant director. So right now we don't really have that set up. In a bigger district, after consulting with some of my colleagues and looking at some of the other bigger districts, that elementary and secondary setup seems to be a much better way to split the district up and to really stay focused, as opposed to trying to do K through 12 for one area, which is how we have it now. The other thing that right now is Michelle LeBlue, our director, is dealing with a lot of things that the 2 assistant directors will be dealing with, and that so she can, work to continue to have collaborations with principals to be able to work through some of the problem-solving things and keeping us, on track, as opposed to right now she's, sometimes in the midst of things that I think that our proposed program managers will be able to do.
Okay. Did we have the org chart?
Yeah.
Was it? Okay, I thought okay.
Mrs. Telsan?
So just tying into that, staying on the org chart, you and I had exchanged a couple of emails about the evaluation and related services aspect. And one of the concerns I expressed is that right now, I feel like there's a disconnect between our evaluators and those evaluative services and the part of the team, the IEP team, that's actually writing the IEPs and proposing those services for kids. So one of the concerns I expressed is if it's a separate part in the org chart, how are we going to bring them into the fold and make them part of the team in order to make those evaluations more meaningful as we are developing IEPs? Can you share some of that with us?
Yeah, and I intentionally proposed to have that group, that evaluation, directly reporting to me. I don't believe we're where we need to be right now, and the system that's set up and the way we've been doing business is not working. So having that group report to me, as well as for next school year, the at-risk department, I think we're calling it the Learning Support Services Department now, is going to be also reporting to me. So we have RTI, dyslexia, 504, special ed, and all that evaluation, all that collaboration, I think will help. And then I'll be working very closely with the director and the 2 assistant directors to make sure that we continue to get that communication to the staff. You know, I will be the one at those we have a monthly meeting with all the CCCs and the department heads, and I will be at those meetings, leading those meetings. So I won't be disconnected from that involvement and from those staff members, so that we can keep that communication going between evaluation, writing IEPs, monitoring progress, and so on.
It's your intent to facilitate that yourself and that team effort. Okay, thank you.
All right, do we have any other discussion on this item? Thank you, Dr. Hill, very much for bringing us that information.
Thank you.
And so I think we're ready to vote now. Please vote. Motion passes. So we'll look forward to new and exciting things in the special ed. Thank you very much for your help with that. Our next item is regarding the missed instructional days from the flooding, and we have a resolution related to that as well. Do we have a motion?
Madam President, I move to approve action item 12B as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Rice and a second by Mr. Rosenthal. Do we have discussion on this item?
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, we should say thank you, Commissioner Morath, for the waiver of those. It was going to be kind of hard to figure out how we were going to squeeze in those 2 days with so little time left in our school calendar. So I guess it's a lot of time compared to the Memorial Day from last year, but still is a little bit tight, so that's right. And obviously the not obviously, but the resolution is with regard to the employees being paid for those missed days. So that's what the resolution is about from the board. Do we have discussion about that, about anything? All right, hearing none, then please vote. Motion passes. So that completes our action. Now we're on to the future board meeting agenda items.
All right, we've got a very long list of items for May and June. As you can see, our document only goes through the end of this fiscal year. Then we'll begin starting with July, but May is a very big month. We've got a couple of reports on the assessment plan, program evaluation. Some internal audit updates are coming your way. We also have a number of construction agreements, and it's a very long list, so I'm not going to read it. A lot of contracts, and I'm trying to pick up the big things. One thing we're going to ask you to do in May is to set the public budget meeting and the proposed tax rate hearing that we're required to conduct every year. We will do the meeting hopefully in June, but we'll ask you to call that meeting at one of your May opportunities. We're planning to bring forward the educational technology plan in May for your initial review. Let's see. Looks
We
like
have the
those are the big
naming
things.
facilities policy on there, I see, which will be important
Yes.
for all the facilities we're gonna be building.
And we're also returning back to the E-Series policy, as I mentioned to you previously, so you'll be getting that binder delivered to you later this week and then we'll put those policies on the May agenda for consideration and possible action. Of course, in June, we'll be doing a district strategic plan update. We've also got the budget adoption in June. There's also a number of construction contracts related to the bond program. As you can see, you hired architects about 9 months ago. All those construction projects are coming forward for approval now. So we're looking forward to getting those going, and I think we're on a very solid track for those right now. The other thing we typically do in June as well, which is not listed here, is we have our first STAR data in. So we're going to be in June or July doing an update on STAR, just to give you an overview of how our performance, how we fared this year. And of course, what else? Is there anything I'm overlooking or any other suggestions or thoughts that we need to be considering for the next couple of months?
Does anybody have any comments, Mrs. Tossan?
Yeah, so I'm glad to hear about the accountability and STAR testing. So you said June or July for that?
Yes, ma'am.
One other question I had is about our IR campuses. I'd like to see an update with regard to those campuses and then how we fared and what our plans are going forward on that.
I would see that as being combined with, because I think that'll be a good indicator and a good time to extend into
Yeah.
that. Would you consider that appropriate?
I think that's appropriate.
I guess the thing is, we don't want to put that too late in case there's things that surfaces action that the
Maybe.
board needs to take to support those campuses or other campuses that are having difficulty with STAR testing. So we don't want to delay it too long that we can't take action. So I'm thinking more June rather than July.
Well, that would be our goal. Our intent would be that we actually have meaningful information to present, though. So we need to make sure we have the data in and are able to present it in a timely manner. But I'll provide you an update as we meet to build the coming agendas and to make sure that we're on track for that.
Thank you.
All right, that sounds good. Do we have any other discussion or comments? All right, well, I just want everyone to know that it's 8:29, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you so much.
That was pretty good, huh?